The building looked ordinary in the way most life-changing places do. Not tall enough to feel important, not small enough to feel temporary. Just a clean glass entrance, a security desk, and a steady stream of people walking like they already belonged there. Yusuf stood across the street for a moment, pretending he was checking his phone, when really he was checking his breathing. He had practiced answers for 3 nights. He had ironed his shirt twice. He had printed his resume at a shop that smelled like warm paper and toner because his home printer had died months ago. He wasn't late. That mattered to him more than it should have. He crossed with the traffic light and entered the lobby. Cold air hit his face. The kind of air conditioning that made you feel like you should speak softer, as if the building itself was expensive and could hear you. A receptionist sat behind a desk with a neat stack of visitor forms. Her lipstick was perfect in a way that made Yusuf feel underdressed, even though his shirt was tucked in and his belt matched his shoes. "Good morning," he said, and his voice came out thinner than he expected. She smiled politely, not warmly. "Name?" "Yusuf Khan." "Interview?" 10:30. She tapped a keyboard. The clicking felt loud in the quiet lobby. "HR. Second floor. Please sign in." He wrote his name on the form. His handwriting looked shaky. He hated that. He tried to make the last letters stronger, like he could rewrite the first ones by force. The elevator ride was only a few seconds, but it stretched because he watched his reflection in the steel wall. He didn't look like the kind of person who belonged in offices. He looked like someone trying, which was true. On the second floor, the hallway smelled faintly like coffee and printer ink. A small sign on the wall said Human Resources, in simple black letters. Yusuf followed it to a glass door and stepped inside. The waiting area was smaller than he expected. A water dispenser, 2 chairs, a framed poster about company values. Teamwork, honesty, innovation. The poster looked like it had never been questioned. A second receptionist, younger, glanced up. "Can I help you?" "I'm here for an interview," Yusuf said, and offered a careful smile. She checked a list on her screen. "Yusuf Khan, please have a seat. Someone will be with you shortly." Shortly. That word could mean 2 minutes or 20. Yusuf sat down and placed his resume folder on his lap like it was fragile. His knee bounced without permission. He watched the door that led deeper into the office. People passed by sometimes, moving fast, holding papers, speaking in low voices. Nobody looked stressed the way he felt. They looked like they had somewhere to be, and that made him feel like he didn't. Another candidate walked in 10 minutes later, a woman in a blazer with a clean bun and a calm face. She signed in, sat, and immediately pulled out a notebook. Her hands didn't shake. She didn't look at the door like it might decide her future. Yusuf's phone vibrated. A message from his older cousin. "How's it going?" He stared at it. He didn't answer. He didn't want to type hope into the world yet. He focused instead on details. The hum of the air vent, the faint sound of typing, the way the water dispenser cup holder was slightly crooked. Details were easier than thoughts. Finally, the glass door opened and a man stepped out. Mid-30s, clean shirt, ID badge clipped at his waist. He held a small tablet and wore the expression of someone running through tasks, not emotions. "Yusuf Khan," he called. Yusuf stood too quickly. His folder almost slipped. He caught it and forced his face to stay calm. "Yes," he said. The man nodded. "I'm Imran. Come with me." They walked down a hallway. Yusuf tried to match Imran's pace. He didn't want to seem slow, but he didn't want to seem rushed either. Every step felt like a test. Imran stopped at a door and opened it. "You can have a seat." The interview room was plain. A table, 3 chairs, a small box of tissues in the middle like an unspoken warning. On one side of the room, a window showed a parking lot and a pale morning sky. The light made everything look honest. Yusuf sat. Imran sat across from him and placed the tablet on the table. He didn't offer water. Yusuf told himself not to overthink it. A second person entered, Ms. Aisha, the HR manager. She wore a simple outfit, no big jewelry, her hair pulled back. She had the calm confidence of someone who had watched hundreds of people try their best in this same room. "Good morning," she said. Her smile was practiced but not cruel. "Good morning," Yusuf replied. He tried to sound steady. They exchanged polite introductions. Imran asked him to walk through his resume. Yusuf began with the version he had rehearsed, but halfway through he realized his voice sounded like a script. He adjusted, trying to speak more naturally. "I've been working freelance where I can," he said, "mostly handling small customer support tasks for online sellers. I'm used to dealing with people who are upset. Sometimes they're upset for real reasons, sometimes they just need someone to listen." Aisha nodded slightly. Her pen moved across a notepad. Imran asked about teamwork. Yusuf gave an example about a time he helped a colleague handle a complaint. Aisha asked about handling pressure. Yusuf described a day when a client threatened to leave and he had to solve the issue quickly. The questions were normal, which made Yusuf feel hopeful. Normal meant he wasn't failing. Normal meant he had a chance. Then came the question he feared the most. "Tell me about a time you made a mistake," Aisha said, "and what you learned from it." Yusuf's throat tightened. He had rehearsed this too. He talked about miscommunication with a client, how he apologized, how he fixed it, how he set up a clearer process. He tried to keep it simple, real. Aisha's eyes stayed on him, but not intensely. More like she was watching the shape of his answer rather than the words. Imran glanced at his tablet. He scrolled. Yusuf noticed his thumb moving quickly, like he was moving ahead. That small gesture wasn't dramatic. It didn't scream anything, but it planted a seed of worry in Yusuf's mind. He pushed it away and kept speaking, because what else could he do? He finished his answer, then asked a question of his own about training and growth. Aisha answered politely, the kind of answer that had no edges. It sounded correct and safe, like it could be said to anyone in any interview at any time. Yusuf nodded and smiled like he understood. Inside, he wanted something more specific, something that felt like they were imagining him here. The interview continued. Questions about availability, about salary expectations, about handling angry customers. Yusuf tried to stay calm. He tried to read their faces. He tried to interpret the pauses. And the whole time, he was chasing something invisible. The exact moment where an interview shifts from possibility to conclusion. He didn't know it yet, but that moment was coming. Not in a shout, not in an insult, in something smaller, in something people usually miss, in something Yusuf would never forget. So quietly that if Yusuf told the story later, people would ask, "Are you sure?" And he would struggle to explain it without sounding like he was imagining things. But he was sure, because the body knows. The body reads a room faster than the mind wants to admit. The interview had reached the stage where the questions became shorter. That was the first change. Not harsh, not rude, just less curious. Imran stopped asking follow-ups. Earlier, when Yusuf spoke, Imran would say, "Interesting, can you expand on that?" Or, "What did you do next?" But now, when Yusuf answered, Imran nodded once, eyes down on the tablet, and moved on. Aisha leaned back in her chair. Her pen, which had been moving steadily, paused more often. Yusuf kept answering. He kept trying to sound confident. He used examples. He tried to be clear. He smiled at the right moments. He avoided rambling. Then Imran asked, "If a customer is yelling on the phone, what do you do first?" Yusuf answered carefully. "First, I don't take it personally. I let them finish, then I acknowledge what they're feeling. People calm down when they feel heard. Then I ask questions, only enough to understand the problem so I can solve it." It was a good answer. It was true. He had lived that answer. Aisha nodded. Imran said, "Okay. Just okay." Yusuf watched Imran's hand. It moved to the edge of the table and tapped his tablet screen twice, like he was ticking a box. Then Imran did something small that turned Yusuf's stomach. He placed the tablet slightly to his right, not in front of him anymore. Not facing Yusuf. Angled away like the interview itself was no longer the main task. Aisha glanced at her phone for half a second. Her eyes moved down and back up. Half a second. But Yusuf felt it like a door closing. He told himself he was being paranoid. Everyone checks their phone. Everyone shifts things on a table. That doesn't mean anything. So he kept going. Imran asked about Yusuf's last role. Yusuf explained. He spoke about handling multiple chats and calls. He spoke about keeping calm. He spoke about hitting targets without becoming rude. Aisha asked, "Why did you leave?" Yusuf answered honestly. "The work ended. It wasn't stable. I need something consistent." Aisha's pen moved again. She wrote a few words. Then she drew a line under them. Yusuf noticed because he had nothing else to look at except their hands and faces. He tried to steady himself by asking another question, the way interview coaches suggest. "What does success look like in this role after the first 3 months?" he asked. Aisha smiled a little. "Good question." She explained general expectations. Learning the system, meeting quality standards, being on time, handling a certain volume. It was the same kind of answer as before, accurate but not personal. Then Imran said the line. "All right," he said. "I think we're good. Do you have any other questions for us?" Came earlier than Yusuf expected. He knew interviews. He had done enough of them to recognize timing. There was usually a final round of clarifications, a deeper question, something that tested how you think. But this felt like they were skipping steps. Yusuf looked down at his folder. Inside it were printed questions he had prepared. He had practiced them in front of a mirror. He had circled the ones that sounded smart. His brain suddenly went blank. He chose one at random. "What are the next steps after this interview?" Aisha leaned forward slightly, and Yusuf felt a flicker of hope. Then she said it. "We'll be in touch. Not we'll call you. Not you'll hear from us by Friday. Not we're moving you to the next stage. Just, we'll be in touch." Yusuf nodded. "Okay." Imran stood up. That was the second line. Not the one on paper, an actual line. The moment one person stands, the room changes. Standing is a decision. Standing means the conversation is finished. Yusuf stood too, a second late, and felt the delay like a stain. Aisha gathered her notepad. Imran reached for the door handle, already opening it. And Yusuf realized something cold and simple. They were not imagining him here. They were already imagining the next person walking in. The realization didn't feel like anger. It felt like gravity. He shook their hands. Imran's handshake was polite and light. Aisha's was brief. Neither of them said anything cruel. Neither of them looked annoyed. That was the worst part. It wasn't a dramatic rejection. It was a clean exit. Yusuf stepped into the hallway. The office sounds returned. Keyboards, footsteps, a phone ringing somewhere. Behind him, the door clicked shut. That click was loud. He walked toward the waiting area, passing the same poster about company values. Teamwork, honesty, innovation. It looked exactly the same as before. The world hadn't changed. But Yusuf had. The second receptionist looked up. "All done." "Yes," Yusuf said. He tried to smile. He didn't fully succeed. He walked to the elevator and waited. The elevator took longer this time, or maybe time just stretched when you wanted to leave quickly. When the doors opened, he stepped in and stared at his reflection again. His face looked normal. That surprised him. He expected it to look broken. The elevator descended. Floor numbers lit up and disappeared. In the lobby, the air conditioning hit him again. He signed out. His hand felt steadier now, not because he was calm, but because the waiting was over. Outside, sunlight hit his eyes. Cars moved. People talked. A man laughed loudly into his phone. Life continued like it didn't care. Yusuf walked a few steps and stopped near the side of the building, away from the entrance. He took out his phone and stared at it. The cousin's message was still there. "How's it going?" He typed. "It went okay." Then he deleted it. He typed, "Not sure." Deleted. Finally he typed, "Done." Heading home. He sent it. He stood there for a moment, listening to his own breathing. This was the part nobody filmed in motivational videos. The quiet outside the building. The moment you replay every sentence you said. The moment you wonder if you should have smiled more, or spoken less, or asked different questions. But Yusuf also realized something else, something more honest than hope. The interview didn't end because of one wrong answer. It ended because something didn't click, and he had felt the exact second it happened. Not when they said, "We'll be in touch." Not when they shook his hand. Not even when the door closed. It happened when Imran angled the tablet away just a few inches, and the room stopped leaning toward him. That was the moment. That was the moment he realized the interview was over. Not officially. Not on paper. But in the way people decide things before they announce them. Yusuf took a deep breath, put his phone in his pocket, and started walking. He didn't know what the next email would say, but he knew he would recognize the moment again next time. And next time, he wouldn't mistake politeness for possibility.